With sightings going back as early as the 1780s, this red-eyed, ape-like creature has roamed the Australian continent for centuries. With reports spanning from the dense forests of Queensland to the rugged terrain of the Blue Mountains, the elusive nature of the Yowie adds to its allure, capturing researchers and adventurers seeking to unravel its mysteries. Welcome to the world of the arcane. Welcome everyone to the Arcane Archives podcast. I hope you're all doing well wherever you may be listening, and if this is your first time tuning in, a very special thank you to you. I have to give a quick shout out to our very first international listeners in both Toronto, Canada and Brussels, Belgium. Again, thank you all so much for the support of the podcast. It truly means a lot. With this episode focusing on our very first cryptid, I wanted to quickly give a definition of what a cryptid is, just in case there are some of you out there who have never heard of that word. A cryptid is a creature or entity whose existence has been suggested or claimed, but is not recognized by mainstream science. These creatures often come from folklore, myth, or anecdotal sightings rather than tangible evidence. Examples may include Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, the Chupacabra, and the Yeti. All of that being said, feel free to go over to my Twitter account, which is linked down below in the description, to go see the pictures that I have posted of the Yowie. Also, I post pictures on that account for each week's episodes, so don't forget to check back there for the future episodes. Also, right before I started recording, I decided to look up how to say Yowie, so I didn't, look like an idiot, and I have to say I'm really glad that I did. I was calling it Yowie the whole time, which in reality, as I've been saying, it's pronounced Yowie. So thank you YouTube for not letting me embarrass myself and giving me a video that tells me how to say it. So what does the Yowie actually look like? Well, with any cryptid, there are a wide range of features that people claim they have, and the Yowie is no different. To start, there is a belief that there are two different species of Yowie. The only real noticeable difference between the two is their height. The first and smaller species is said to only grow between 4 to 5 feet tall. The other, much taller one, can get anywhere between 6 to 10 feet on average, but there was a reported encounter of a Yowie 12 feet tall. Besides this height difference, everything else seems to be the same for both. Unlike its cousin, the Bigfoot in North America, the Yowie is apparently a lot more aggressive, with even some reported attacks. Some of the illustrations I've seen have depicted them with red eyes, but nowhere does it explicitly say that or is it written down. But honestly, for the sake of making them sound cooler, we'll leave that in there. Along with that, they have a red mouth, two giant fang-like canine teeth, kind of like a saber-toothed tiger had, and they are covered from head to toe in brownish red hair. Also, in case it wasn't obvious, they walk on two legs. Last feature, and by far the most bizarre one, is that the Yowie has, or at least can turn its feet backwards, so that the footsteps appear to be going the opposite direction to throw off anyone chasing after it. Honestly, haven't heard of any sort of feature like that with any other cryptid, so that was interesting reading about, and I had to do a double take there. There are different ideas on what the Yowie actually is. Some people consider it to be kind of like an ape-like creature, while others say the face is more prehistoric than that. Claims of it being a giant marsupial are also thrown in there, and also the idea that it's a prehistoric human. Like I said, cryptids have a wide range of claimed features, and the Yowie is no different. When it comes to the beginning of the Yowie, there really is no first official sighting of it. Many of the first sightings were passed down through oral history, through the indigenous people living at the time, so we can only take what they say about the early events with a grain of salt. The first reported accounts started happening when in 1788, Europeans landed in Sydney Cove and created a convict settlement there. Now, just a quick little fact, a convict settlement in this example is when they ship off a bunch of convicts to a remote area, typically an island, to separate them from the general population. When it comes to the name of the Yowie, once again, people are claiming many different things. Some people say we don't know where their name comes from. Others say we have concrete proof that this is the language that it comes from. It's all pretty confusing stuff. I'm going to go ahead and list all the different names that the Yowie goes by. And warning, I am going to butcher these pronunciations, so bear with me. So you have Yowie. There is Yowie spelled Y-O-W-I, Yahoo, Pangkarlangu, Quinkin, Jugabina, Jurawara, Dulaga, Yaroma, Wawi, Jimbra, Yahoo Devil, and the Hairy Man of the Woods. I'm actually kind of surprised I said all those pretty well. I expected to fully butcher all that. I honestly think Pangkarlangu sounds the best. We're going to stick with Yowie because it's a lot easier to say and I don't want to embarrass myself even further. Going back to the early sightings in the 1780s, a significant one happened in 1789. So these Marines and the previously mentioned convicts were out on a hunting trip. After killing a couple of animals, they started to head back to the camp. On the way back to the camp, they saw this humanoid creature on a nearby hill. They claimed that it was twice the height of an average man. So once again, this is one of those first recorded contacts with the Yowie. Take it with a grain of salt. So after this sighting in 1789, they continued all throughout the years, with the most recent sighting actually occurring in 2022. I couldn't find anything newer than 2022 that had been officially reported or submitted. So 2022 was the most recently documented case. So let's take some time now and actually read through some of these encounters. And a big thank you to the website yowiehunters.com because they have quite the catalog of sightings and we'll mainly be pulling from these events. So our first sighting was located in Burleigh, Queensland. Again, before I continue, if I mispronounce any location, any name, I apologize. I don't live in Australia, so I don't know how to say certain things. And also, I'm just awful at reading cities and names. So, this was in Burleigh, Queensland. This was in July of 1973 at 11 p.m. And this is what it says. The Queensland coast seems to have Yowie periodically stepping out of the hinterland into the public view. Before 1975, the term didn't exist, so they called it bunyip. 16-year-old Alan Livingston of Melinda Street in Southport had heard the stories. They came into mind when, over several weekends, he had seen glowing eyes when driving past a spot on the Talabudgera Creek Road. At that date, this was just beyond the build-up area. So, on Saturday, the 28th of July, 1973, he got together 3 friends, aged 15 to 19, to investigate. They drove west of Flay's Fauna Sanctuary over a hill and stopped at a wooden bridge at the bottom near a gateway. It was now 11 p.m. They left the lights on, and soon they saw the eyes. All but the youngest got out of the car. As soon as we got near it, and this is a quote, "As soon as we got near it, the bunyip, or whatever it was, came charging out of the trees towards us. It traveled at what seemed like a quick walk, moving its arms like a man. We could see the color of its fur outlined in the lights from the car's headlights, but I couldn't see a nose, teeth, or ears, only eyes. We could hear the pad of its feet, but there was no noise, no grunts or growls, no heavy breathing. My heart started to beat real fast as he came for us. We were all scared and took off like rabbits for the car. They were no more than 4.5 to 6 meters away when the approach commenced. Its fur was reddish, and he estimated the height at 173 centimeters. However, Alan's courage was not completely exhausted. He came back the following Wednesday with 4 mates, 3 of whom had not been there and were skeptics. Then they saw the eyes and the shape of the thing climbing a tree. Our second sighting example comes out of Coomera Valley, Queensland in 1978. Mr. L. Rai told of a nightmarish encounter with a Yowie after a schoolboy in Nerong came forward with a sighting only weeks prior. Mr. Rai was going to keep quiet about the incident, as many do, but decided to back the boy's claims. Mr. Rai states, "We had been playing indoor bowls at Southport and were dropping one of the ladies off in the Kumara Valley about midnight when my wife and I saw this huge thing moving towards the edge of the road. It was huge, about 10 to 12 feet tall. It walked right across the road, stepped over a barbed wire fence, and then walked along the paddock besides the road. We saw it for almost an hour and we know it was no illusion." Mrs. Rai says, "I was terrified. It was really huge." She said that her husband does not drink and drive, and even though she knew people would doubt her story, she was convinced about what she saw. She added that they once thought the Yowie to be myth, but not anymore. Our third example takes place in Deepswater, Queensland, in August of 2019 at 6:30 a.m., so a little bit newer of an occurrence. I'm on 60 acres at Deepwater and living off the grid in a small cabin. I've lived here for 12 years and this has been ongoing for ages. It's only recently that I've two and two together. Broken branches, logs moved across the track, and stick structures all around the perimeter, plus branches being pulled down, blocking the path. There's no excuse for it. Dead trees have been picked up in places against other trees like a teepee type of thing. You can see where the base of the trees have been dragged. Then, a few days ago, my dog started doing like an intruder alarm type barking, amongst other noises. I looked outside, parentheses, the trees are all sparse, and here's the group of these black figures moving through the bush about 60 meters away. First of all, I thought it was a group of people. There was about 8 to 10 of them. I thought, who are these people and what are they doing here? Then I realized they are way too big and moving too fast. They were at least 8 feet tall, far too big for a human being. They were large and upright, running. They were moving quickly through the bush. They were large and dark, about 8 feet tall, moving at a fast pace. It was light at the time. The light was coming through the trees. There's nobody else around here. The black figures weren't making any noises. They were silent. Prior to that, there was a lot of noise coming from the top corner of my property, and I could hear other dogs going off. They were moving north to south. I first thought they were people, and I thought, why are all the people on my property? I was talking to a neighbor down the street, and he said he knows a lady close by that is currently trying to get a photo of one on her property. She has them visiting the place and has seen them and is now investing in cameras to place around her property. I can't explain the creatures. I can't explain the brakes or what's moving the logs around, and then there's the noises that come out of the bush. There's also the noises of trees being broken over with a loud crack at night and strange whistling noises. At one night, something banged on the side of the cabin and scared the crap out of me. It's all a bit concerning. Our fourth encounter takes place in Lamington National Park in Queensland in 1988 at 8:30 p.m. Back in my teenage years from 12 until about 21, we would spend every weekend of holiday up at Lamington. There was my youngest brother and my youngest brother's mate and a couple of others. There were 5 of us, with the youngest being about 11 years old. It would have been reasonably late in the evening, probably about 8:30 or so, after a blistering hot day and a thunderstorm. We stopped and made camp right on the edge of the rainforest in a grassy area and started a campfire. There was a flash of lightning, and myself and my brother saw it at the same time. We looked at each other and said, "Is that what I think we saw?" Lightning flashed again, and we saw him walking off. We had a side-on view of it walking, slightly hunched over, probably about 7 feet tall, and covered in matted hair. It would have only been about less than 10 feet away, just in the tree line. It was just strolling through the bush and kept on going. It was easily 7 feet tall. Would have weighed at least 110, 120 kilograms. It was pretty big. It was pretty solid, pretty well built. It was hunched over, but walking like a person. I only got a side view of its face, more of a profile. I would say more apish than human. Its hair was an orangey brown, probably a bit lighter than an orangutan. The hair was like an old English sheepdog, a bit long and matted. We didn't tell the others until the next day, because we didn't want to spin the young one out. There were other times we had been there we felt we were being tracked. We spent a lot of time there, and we often felt we were being followed. This next encounter takes place in July/August of 2020. Strange experience at the Steve Irwin Way Ewan-Matic Dam Bridge area. I'm terrible with remembering dates, etc., which is partly why I'm trying to write this down somehow. So sometime around July to August 2020, time approximately 2:30 to 3:30 a.m., I was driving home. It was pretty clear night, not much cloud around if any as I can vaguely remember. As I write this, I'm struggling with how to word it. I don't want to do an audio report. It's probably not worth it. I just had to get this off of my chest. You may read this and brush it off as just weather related, but it's been kind of bugging me in a way, and I tried to recreate this scenario many, and I mean many times after. I drive through that section looking for something, anything, hoping that I might see something that could explain it in a more realistic way. I work nights on the road, and I travel that section of road pretty much most nights. I'm approximately 50 years old, and I've been driving for at least 30 plus years and worked on the road at night for a fair few years. I'm very familiar with what animals we have in the Australian bush, and I'm familiar with what fog, weather, and changing light and shadow effects can have at certain times of night. I was traveling southeast over the Ewan-Matic Bridge, and as I go through that section, I go back and forth with high and low beam to try and see any roos or whatever along the roadside, looking for movements, eye shine, etc., as it's common to see a few roos now and then close to the edge of the road. As I've reached somewhere nearly around the southeastern guardrail end, just before it starts to bend left, I was doing approximately 80 kilometers and I was scanning as usual for movement. I looked to the left-hand side of the road about 150 to 200 meters ahead and thought to myself, WTF is that? I've noticed something rather big and upright and looking like it was walking to the left side of the road. I watched it move maybe 3 meters to the left. There are some 80-kilometer speed signs and another blue sign for the caravan park ahead just near where it happened. Whatever it is was just heading off the road into the ditch/drain on the left side, and like it was going to go into bushes and paper bark trees near the property in that area. I could see what looked like definite bipedal motion and arm movement, like a strange purposeful movement, as if it was going somewhere, which is what got my attention. It was just about to cross the drain, then it completely changed directions in a blink of an eye, almost like in a panic, and kind of strafed sideways, floated across to the other side of the road in what seems like 2 to 3 seconds or even less. And it's a pretty wide road, especially from tree line to tree line. It moved so quickly across the road that it was kind of mesmerizing, like time slowed down or something. It went from the left-hand side of the road/drain, heading towards the bush to the right side of the road and squatting down in between paper bark trees and then disappearing as I passed the crossing area. I'd say whatever it was approximately 6 feet to 6.5 feet max. It wasn't as big as the speed signs that I have come to think of as a measurement guide. It looked like a shiny random blend of a blackish brown to gray. The kind of shiny a healthy dog or horse coat of hair, which made me think of why that type of shiny. It was very solid and hunched over. When it crossed the road, it looked at least a meter wide. I didn't see eyes, I didn't see a neck, I didn't smell anything as I was driving with windows up to 80 kilometers. I didn't really see any length of hair or actual hair apart from the color. I first saw whatever it was about maybe 150 to 200 meters away, so I couldn't really make out any distinguishing features. But as soon as I got to where I'd been watching it cross the road, it seemed to just disappear into trees, squatting down as I passed. It's hard to explain as my brain was trying to explain it away as fog the whole time. Even though I knew it wasn't and couldn't have been, I've been driving through the fog, working in fog, etc. Fog just doesn't change directions. Plus that and travel across the road in a split second, making it a beeline and squat down in between some paper bark trees. After having this strange experience, I've gone out of my way many times when going through a patch of fog to watch what it does, how it behaves, etc. Even turning the vehicle around and driving back into it. I've pondered on it a fair bit and thought, how can I explain this or justify this or something? I know that section of road very well. After looking at Google Maps, I've realized there's a track and a few tracks on the right hand side that goes down into the bush around the dam, pretty much right where the trees are where it squatted and disappeared. I've traveled through there many times that I can count, before and after that, and I've never seen anything remotely similar. As much as I seriously want to just see something that I can close the little folder file in my head and put it down to reality, and to be honest, a large part of my brain just wants it to be fog, even though I know what I saw. You guys probably won't think much of this after hearing and experiencing some of the interesting encounters yourselves and from others, but like I said, I kind of wanted to get this off my chest. I'm sure I've left a lot out and can't remember finer details, but it is what it is. Thanks for your time. Our final encounter is in the Agnes Waters in Queensland, 26th of October 2018 at 6 a.m. I'm backpacking from the Netherlands. Right now I'm in Agnes Water, Queensland. I've just arrived here this morning by Greyhound bus. While riding the bus, I woke up when the sun came up. I really like just to look through the window because this land looks so much different than my own. While I was looking out the window, I saw a big, hairy, human-like appearance in a bit of a more open bush area. At a distance of about 100 meters, it was walking. It looked kind of like the Wookiee from Star Wars. Now, I'm a pretty down-to-earth guy, and I usually don't really believe in folklore or anything like that, but this sighting freaked me out a little bit and got me interested. Have there been any known sightings of big ape-like humans or something like that in the past? Cheers. P.S. Awesome country and excuse my English. Steph. Like I said before we started reading about the encounters, there are plenty of submitted reports encountered fraction of the amount of sightings, encounters that they have recorded on the Yowie Hunters website. I could have spoken for hours and hours of different accounts. So keep that in mind as we continue on. I feel like I have to add this next part to the episode because when I read it doing my research, it brought a huge smile to my face. There are a couple of references to the Yowies in movies, shows, music, etc. And one of them happens to be an old animated Scooby-Doo movie. This one in particular is Scooby-Doo and the Legend of the Vampire. The mystery gang literally goes to Australia where they meet what they call the Yowie Yahoo. Now, for some reason they depict it as a vampire, but hey, that sounds good to me. And what's crazy is that I seriously remember growing up and watching this specific movie. It brought such a smile to my face, and I just felt like sharing that. A little cool connection there to my own life. One more reference to the Yowie, but this time in music, is the band named Yowie. On their debut album, Cryptozoology, I don't know how you say it, in the year 2000, they have a Yowie on their album cover. Now, I listened to their music, and simply put, it's not my cup of tea. Feel free to go check them out if you want. Now on to the theories. When it comes to the theories of the Yowie, it can really be broken down into two different camps. Camp 1 is that it's real, and Camp 2 is that it's a hoax. So, with it being fake, it's no surprise that the majority of people believe that this is a hoax, with sightings going as far back as the 1700s, having little to no evidence really doesn't help it prove its existence. When combing through all the different encounters or the tall tales, there are questions that naturally arise. Questions such as, how long do they live? Do they reproduce? If they do reproduce, shouldn't they have a lot of them since we've been seeing them for so long? How can people have such wildly different descriptions? What do they eat? Why haven't we found bones? Why isn't there any video evidence if there are so many encounters? And so on and so on. Pretty much all of the things you would hear from someone who doesn't believe in a cryptid. So if we were to find proof, whether that's bones, if we actually capture the thing, or anything in between, the next step would be to find out what the heck this thing is. I mentioned it before, and there's a lot of theories on what it is. It could be an ape-like creature, a giant marsupial, some even consider it a spirit. Sadly, until something is found that helps push the idea that this thing exists, we'll just have to keep believing that maybe it's out there somewhere in the Australian wilderness. As for what I believe, I'm pretty smack dab in the middle, and this goes for a lot of cryptids. I'm open to the idea of there being creatures out there undiscovered, including the Yowie. With the massive amount of encounters, it's hard to say that they were all faked or that these people had something wrong with them. With the massive amount of encounters, it's hard to say that they were all faked or that these people had something wrong with them during the actual encounter, which honestly opens up a chance for something. Now, will I go out there looking for it? Nope. Will I fully believe it exists until I see something? No. If there is more evidence found, will that sway me into believing it? Honestly, most likely. But until then, I'll leave the passionate ones to keep looking for it themselves. With that being said, thank you everyone for listening to today's episode. A special one again, as this is our first episode talking about cryptids. If you did enjoy, please rate the podcast and check out all of my other episodes. If you are listening on a platform where you can comment, let me know what topics you would like for me to discuss. Thank you again, everyone, for taking time out of your day to listen to me. I'll see you all in the next episode.